Isaac Julien， 我相信大家对他非常的熟悉哦。他在早期80年代的时候就开始做了非常多的实验的影像作品。那当初比较多的主题是在黑人的离散的认同问题也好，或者是性别啦，或是欲望的问题。那他在其实他在2006年北美馆的庞毕度中心新媒体艺术展呢，有一个 Bartana 的这个作品展现，但是这次是他第一次有机会来到台湾，在当代馆做这么大型的多媒体的装置呈现。好，那首先我就会从比较简单的问题开始，就是这次展出的作品叫做《万重浪》，它是从英国默克姆湾惨案启发所去做创作的。因为当时这个事件在英国有一个很大的轰动，因为当时是一些中国的非法劳工去那边采集贝壳去赚钱，然后结果没想到就受到了海浪侵袭，然后大概有20几名的劳工呢全部死亡了。那这件事情，不管是在中国或英国都有很大的讨论。当时有一个英国导演叫做 Nick Broomfield， 他拍摄了一个鬼佬 Ghost 的这部作品，就是根据这个事件去拍摄的。那他是用比较纪录片的拍摄手法，然后去邀请没有训练的演员去做演出。但是对比之下呢 ，Isaac 的创作方式就非常非常的不一样哦。他开始要求了中国的诗人王平去作诗，然后而且做了非常非常大量的研究，包含是中国的传统神话传说啦，还有中国的电影。那可不可以请 Isaac 告诉我们说，你为什么会选择这样的创作方式？
Okay, thank you for your question, and also thank you so much for presenting 10,000 Waves in your exhibition, Rebellion of the Image, which is a wonderful exhibition. So I'm very proud to be able to show this work in Taiwan, in Taipei, MOCA, or MOCA Taipei, as you call it. And yes, in relationship to your question, Nick Broomfield, who's a very important documentary British filmmaker, did a very important film on the tragedy of Morecambe Bay. And in fact, what I learned while I was here in Taipei was that the researcher who worked very closely with Nick Broomfield on his film Ghosts actually came from Taiwan. And she's someone who broke the story in the Guardian newspaper, which is where I first came across the story.
感谢您的问题。我这次非常荣幸能够有机会到台北当代馆来展出他的作品。那对于您的问题呢，其实当然 Nick Broomfield 是在针对这个真实的事件，其实做了很详尽的研究跟很详尽的拍摄。那我后来也才知道，其实当时跟他一起合作的这位研究员来自台湾，而这位来自台湾的研究员当时也在英国的《卫报》上面撰写了这篇相关的新闻报道，也是Isaac 是因此才得知这个事件。
And so the other thing, of course, was that Nick Broomfield's film Ghosts was a documentary, and it was a very good documentary. It was a documentary that charted the journey of the Chinese cocktail pickers from Fujian province to England, to their, tragic deaths, and in fact, my work begins with a few images from Nick Broomfield's film. He kindly allowed me to use some images. The drowning sequences in the beginning actually are from his film Ghosts. And he was very generous because we both worked with the same reporter and journalist, and after he had made this film, I felt in a way one work had been made, or one document, so I wanted 10,000 Waves to be another sort of meditation on this tragedy.
在Nick Bernthal 所做的这部非常动人的纪录片当中，他其实回溯了这23位不幸丧命的中国移工，他们从福建一路千里迢迢到了英国，到最后发生悲剧性的事件而身亡的这个过程。所以在这一次Isaac 他在创作这个万重浪的时候，导演Nick Bernthal 这位导演非常慷慨的借给他几张影像跟图片，可以用在这一次作品里面的一开头的片段。所以其实他们双方之间都是针对同一个事件进行研究之后，希望能够呈现出不同的诠释跟不同的观点。比如Bernthal 使用的是比较类似是使用的是纪录片式的观点，而他希望从另外一个角度来述说这件事情。
So my work, in a way, began with the collecting of these documents that have been reported by this Taiwanese journalist. I accumulated lots of archival imagery from the reporting, and then I met a poet called Wang Ping when I was teaching in America, and I brought her to Morecambe Bay. My starting point was for her to write a poem about the tragedy. I brought her to Morecambe Bay in 2006, 2 years after the tragedy occurred, and 1 year later I got the poem back. And from there I started the project, to visualize the project.
在这一次作品的创作的历程当中呢，其实这件事情是2004年发生的事情。后来到了2006年的时候，当Isaac在美国任教，他邀请了中国的诗人王平，针对这个事件来创作这首诗。他也在2006年的时候让王平到了这个遇难的现场。后来在隔了1年，2007年的时候，Isaac 才收到了这首诗，然后Isaac在依据了他之前搜集的来自这位台湾记者的一些报道还有影像，作为这次作品的出发点。
So I think the thing is, if you it's quite difficult. I mean, I think the title of the exhibition, The Rebellion of the Moving Image, is very important, because how can you make a work which somehow will stand the test of time beyond the immediate event? So the problem with documentaries, I think, important as they are, they perform an important function, but in a way I was interested in what I call the aesthetics of reparation, which is really connected to the idea of memorialization, and how can you make a work which will resonate across time. And so that's my challenge. I want to make a work that can stand the test of time, that can somehow still be important maybe 10 years or 20 years after an event. So how can you make a work that encapsulates those aesthetics, that can cultivate, that can in a way grab the attention of people and make them think about it beyond the politics or the tragedy of the day. So I need to.
当然，这一次这个作品的能够陈列的这个影像的模板这个展览，他觉得非常的重要，非常的有意义。因为当然纪录片非常的重要，它就回应的是这个非常重要的事件。可是Isaac在创作作品的时候，他希望这件艺术品它能够去通过时间的考验，能够除了去让人们去注意到当下这个事件之外，也许过了10年、20年，这件事情还看到这个作品之后，依然能够激发人们的反思，让这个作品并不只是仅止于当下或者是当时的这个新闻事件的反应，而是还有在后续更多时间，人们能够从不同的观点，然后去同时去思考整个更大方向、更大环境的事情。
So I probably won't answer a question. I can go on. Yes, but I mean, there's lots of things which I'm working on in tandem. If I'm making a project, I'm thinking about the aesthetics. I'm working with Tom on drawings for how the work will be staged, and then also I'm participating in a long research process. So the research process for 10,000 Ways was made over between 2006 to 2010. So it's quite a long period to familiarize myself with, in a way, the Chinese artists and aesthetics and to really, so it took me 4 years to find the Matsu fable, for example, because I wanted to find a method to allegorize the tragedy in some way. Maybe if I came to Taipei earlier, I would have got it quicker.
当然，这次他其实还有很多关于这个作品的事情还可以跟大家说。当然，时间有限，今天就比较浓缩跟大家说明一下。这个作品当然从2006年开始去思索之后，后来到了2010年才正式推出。所以 Isaac 的每部作品里面其实都牵涉到很多漫长的研究过程，还有很多资料的收集。那也希望通过这样的方式之后，能够去呈现出不同的想法跟观点。比如说这一次，他其实经过了4年的研究之后，他后来才发现跟注意到，其实妈祖的这个寓言还有这个民间的信仰，其实可以帮助他把这个故事重新从英国再跟中国连接起来。所以他觉得，如果他当时早一点来台北的话，也许就会更早遇到或者是意识到妈祖在这个故事里面能够扮演的角色。
因为我想今天是第2天的开展日嘛。那应该还有很多的朋友还不太清楚这个作品到底在还有一些理念是什么，可不可以再请Isaac比较简短的再说明一下这次创作还有什么样其他的想法
？Well, I was talking to you a little bit about the process of making the work, and I was talking about the process of making the work and the research methodologies.
我们当然可以跟各位说明一下，比如说后面的研究方法，还有很多内容的组成跟如何呈现的技术过程。
And so I would say that sort of one of the raison d'etre or the reasons behind making the work is twofold. One is, as I said, to make a work that, in a sense, explores some of the sort of experiments in making moving images. So one of those has been the use of multiple screen, a multiple screen design, which breaks away from the kind of classical cinematic experience, and to, in a way, I've been involved with curators in this conversation, because to make my works, they have to be shown in museum context or biennale context. So that this is one sort of, it's like a conceptual kind of framework for how to edit the work and to make the work on multiple screens. And so I have lots of theories around that, which I can go into later. And then I would say, for me, one of the other ideas is really to, I think I was making a number of works in this context, and I wanted to push the bar, to break with my normal way of working. And so exploring questions of migration or questions of movements of people has been something which I've been doing quite often in my work. And I guess I was moved by this tragedy, but I wanted to be able to make a work that would engage with a lot of the aesthetics and cultural questions and representations of a culture which of course I'm not part of, but I feel I have a closeness to in terms of my friends and colleagues, etc.
当然，在这个作品里面有很多不同的含义。他为什么之所以想做这个作品呢？一部分的原因是因为，如果各位有机会之前看过或者等一下看这个作品的话，里面设计有很多不同的频道同时在播放，所以他在过程里面，当然他也希望通过这个多频道的设计之后，能够打破一般人的观影的体验，并不是被动的坐在这边静态的接收资讯而已。所以另外一方面，他其实这么多年以来一直都希望通过这种多频道的方式，然后去呈现出来。当然，另外一点，他的作品 必须要在美术馆或者双年展脉络里面去呈现，所以他在设计的时候，还有去构思的时候，也跟很多策展人沟通，希望在不同的情境里面，这样的作品能够如何的去展现出来、呈现出来。另外一点，他这个故事当然非常的触动，这个世界当然非常触动他的灵魂的底层，所以他希望能够这样把这个故事再现出来。当然，这个并不是他所熟悉的文化，所以他必须要透过不同的研究，还有很多人的认知跟讨论之后，希望能够去呈现出他认为这些事情，比如说中国式的电影或中国式的这些技巧，如何在他的作品里面能够彰显出来。
So in a sense, you could say that 10,000 Waves is a kind of visual poem, and the way that it's structured notationally, a bit like a musical score, which is visualized, and the use of montaging techniques, which I call parallel montage. And so how the piece is orchestrated as a scenography in the space is as important as the content. And so and also the piece moves through different times. So it goes from the contemporary tragedy to Shanghai, contemporary Shanghai, to the 30s Shanghai, and then to the Ming period, to where the Matsu fable originates from. And so it goes back into time.
在这个作品当中，我们刚才提到很多不同的频道，所以他必须要去构思，他把这整个作品看起来像是一个影像诗一样。他在这样的过程里面有不同的，他称之为平行的蒙太奇的手法，所以在不同的剪辑跟不同的拼贴的情况之下，让人们从不同的角度去看待这件事情。而且这个作品里面的故事其实横贯了不同的时代，从当下所发生的事情，到了当代的上海，到了1930年代还在国际租界的上海，还有回到年代当时妈祖的寓言那个源头，所以他把这些不同的时代同时拼贴跟同时呈现出
来。这件作品呢，它其实一开始的开头叫做寻找一个更好的生活 ，better life。然后，所以他Isaac 可能根据的这个事件，他开始去找妈祖的传说，其中有一个是移山岛故事，他发现他跟这个十倍惨难呢，其实有很大的关联性。然后他又从了很多的中国电影，比如说早期30年代的默片是阮玲玉主演的神女这个作品。然后后来他找张曼玉呢，也是因为张曼玉饰演过光景鹏导演的阮玲玉这个作品，所以他把这些像是传说啊，或者是电影的这些全部串联在一起，然后去讲说当时妈祖所在的时代是明朝，然后后来到30年代的上海，然后一路延伸到上海今天的现代化发展的时间。然后这整个影片的时间轴里头呢，其实我们会一直听到他的口白。我觉得这个电影这个作品的声音其实非常有意思。那个口白呢，其实就是他委托王平去创作的这个《纸船》这首诗。这首诗它是根据当时的受难者去一一去创作一小段一小段的诗，所以在整个的作品的时间轴里头，你会一直不断的听到，就是这些罹难者关于这些罹难者的诗，虽然它可能是在不同的时间，可能在明代或者现代，然后所以其实整部片你会一直这个惨案好像一直不断的萦绕在整部片子当中，然后尤其它中间又会掺杂一些好像真实的声音，像是一开始警察搜救的声音。他一直喊说 "Just people"， 就是人吗？这样子。然后我觉得这个一点一点的片段的闪现呢，其实非常有趣。尤其是有一幕是赵涛，他已经在从阮玲玉的那个30年代的电影场景开始走到了非常科技化的浦东的一个饭店，然后看着窗外。然后那时候他好像只是随意的在看着窗外，然后但是声音却开始闪现了一些 "Just People" 的声音哦，好像是说 可能好像他在看着窗外的那个同时，好像远方也这个事件也正在发生。然后后来就有一个张曼玉的替身开始从窗外，像是妈祖的形象这样子飞起来出现。我会想说，当初为什么会有这样的考量？就只是一个美学上的考量吗？
I mean, I think, you know, in a work like 10,000 Waves, it's really using the idea of poetry, the visual imagery of poetry, or poetry as visual imagery to connect ideas. So in a sense, it doesn't have the connection in a kind of more rational sense. It's working more on this sort of unconscious or dreamlike manner. But in the work, there are many references to the actual event, and the piece is haunted to a certain extent. The main protagonist, we don't really explain it explicitly, but she keeps hearing, you know, the cries for help. She keeps hearing aspects of the incident. And so I guess in a way I was sort of trying to comment on the fact that this character may appear to be in the better life, but she's troubled by the incidents, you know. So, you know, being in this better life has a cost, so to speak. Maybe it's a cost of her family friend or, you know, someone who was close to her. So she's haunted by the event. And I'm also using parallel montage, or the idea of multiple screens, to create this scenography of a space for meditation to hear these sounds. So it's working in this manner, this more what I'm calling a visual notational manner, like a musical score, but like a visual musical score.
他一直认为他做这次透过影像式的手法，然后看起来好像是阅读一样，所以他这个地方有不同的我们刚才提到的平行蒙太奇的手法，不同的片段同时拼贴在各位的眼前之后，让各位随时闪视到后面当下的世界。在这个故事或在这个作品里面，这个主角他走漫步在这一个空间当中，所以有时候有些画面的闪现，或者有些画面的飞逝，对他而言就好像是梦境一样，他并不一定有这么多理性的这些逻辑的连结等等。但是在这个角色当时我们并没有非常清楚的跟各位解释这个角色，不过Isaac那个想象到这个角色也许已经拥有了更美好的生活，可是这美好生活的这的生活之下跟背后，其实他深受困扰，因为我们要描述的是这个人拥有了美好生活之后，他也许得付出代价，代价也许是来自他的亲人、好友，甚至是因此有生命的丧失跟流失。所以他即便有了美好生活之后，他还是深受这些世界或他所听到的这些声音的困扰或干扰或者是影响。所以在这部作品里面，他希望透过这样的手法之后，能够把这些同时不同的意象能够拼贴跟连接在一起。
那另外想问的问题是，其实在整个的拍摄的时候，虽然它沿用了很多电影或传说，但是它也是一个不断的解构的过程。就是这个部片呢的30年代的上海呢，它其实是在上海影视中心，就是一个片场在里头去拍摄的，现在也是一个观光的景点。然后你会一直看到，就是他赵涛在饰演阮玲玉的角色，但是同时你也会看到剧组人员正在搬那些场景，然后你也会看到最后就是张曼玉的替身在这架着钢索啦，然后后面有绿幕，就是工作人员把它这样子把它拉上去。那当然还有最后的，就是有一个书法家他写的“万重浪”这3个字。然后写完之后，就是老公冲下来，然后把他的所有写的这些毛笔字去把它抹除掉。那当然这样子的手法呢，第一个我会先想到的关锦鹏的阮玲玉这个拍摄的方式。那是张曼玉所主演的嘛，当时是张曼玉在演阮玲玉这个角色，那所以。那另外一个方面是导演又拍摄了导演在跟 张曼玉解释或者是在讨论这个电影要怎么样去演的这个片段，只是说万重浪他在把背后制作过程的这个方式呢呈现出来，对我来说，他其实比较是把在电影制作的背后的劳工，或者是它呈现的机制去呈现出来。那我觉得它其实比较像是一连串的神话的拆解过程。这个神话它可能是比如说妈祖的神话，那也可能是电影工业的神话。那它甚至对我来说，它可能是一个资本的神话，或者是国族神话的整个拆解过程。你可不可以跟我们再解释一下，为什么你会这样子呈现？
No. Well, I think one of the things which is really very unique about making film works of this nature in an art context is that there's a kind of sensitivity to making images which, in some senses, are not the kind of dominant images. You may borrow from the language, but usually there's something else going on. This is one of the reasons why, artists like myself, we might make films, but they're not the kind of normal films, so to speak. And so this is why you have, again, this very interesting title of the exhibition, Rebellion of the Moving Image. So I think one of the things for me is really about trying to use these deconstruction techniques as a way of reminding the audience that it's a film that they're watching, not that they really need reminding because they're in a very unusual environment in the first place. You're surrounded by these multiple screens, so there's really a kind of deconstruction taking place. But I think there's also the idea behind, which was stated, labour. Because in the same way, you can only eat cockle shells because someone laboured to get those. You can only see images because of the labour involved in producing those images. And so for me, it's very important that you reveal this labour in some way. One of the things that occurred, should I stop now?
这一次这个作品刚好放在这个展览叫做《影像的谋反》当中，它确实是非常有意思，也非常的适合，非常的切题。因为当然，电影导演一般的电影导演也会拍摄电影，那艺术家也会拍摄录像。那他们彼此之间差别是，当然艺术家会运用到某些的影像的语言或是叙事的这些语汇，但是他们并不只是要呈现这些内容而已，他们希望还能够有更多的思考在其中，有更多解构的过程。所以这次这个作品里面当然很多解构的内容，不过当然观众其实一走进这个空间就已经已经感知到这个解构了，因为毕竟各位同事看到是多频道的录像，而并不是单一频道传统的观影的体验。而且在这个过程里面，当然我们希望能够去凸显这些美学，或者是这些艺术背后的劳动。因为我们现在生活所享受的任何事物，包括甚至是享受海贝，后面也有人在做劳动之后，各位才能够享受这些美味的海鲜，或者是各位在看电影的时候，也有这么多背后的劳动在发生当中。我们希望透过解构的过程，可以让这些劳动现身。
So I think one of the things which happened when we were making the film was, for example, in the calligraphy section where he writes on glass, was, of course, when you're making a film, you make one shot and you go, oh, that shot's not any good. Let's change it. Let's go back and make a second attempt or a third attempt. And when that happens, the people who are working on the set come, they clean the image and you start. And when this happened, I said, okay, we have to keep filming. Because in a way, for me, in this image, it's almost as if, yes, the cocktail pickers had returned, and so that's one function of something like that, revealing the processes of filmmaking.
在这个作品里面，刚才 在有提到最后一段是这个书法家写书法的过程，然后之后会有劳工把他这个字擦掉。其实这在电影拍摄的过程里面非常常见。当拍了一个镜头之后，也许导演觉得不适合要重拍，导演一喊重拍的时候，所有的工作人员就要上来把它恢复成原状之后，让这个过程再重新发生一次。所以他希望把这个故事跟这个过程能够凸显出来，所以把这个擦拭跟清洁的过程能够留下来之后，提醒各位这件事情其实会一而再、再而三的发生，并不所以，即便是比如说这次的悲剧事件，它可能还是也会一而再、再而三的发生。
But then, on a more metaphoric level, one of the other readings is that when the image of the beautiful calligraphy is, kind of being wiped away, it's like performing a tabula rasa, start again. And so in a way, I thought this was also a bit of a comment in terms of what's been happening in Chinese culture, where, traditions and things are being wiped out quite quickly, change is happening quite quickly, and so it became another sort of metaphor, really. So you could read these two meanings into this deconstruction.
在另外一个含义的话，我们看到这个书法家在玻璃上面写了这三个字之后，被劳工很快速的把它抹除的把它擦拭掉了。它另外一个层的含义是，比如说很多中国传统文化都在快速的消逝当中，所以这个是各位除了在刚才提到这个解读方式之外，另外一种可能的解读方式。
So similarly, for the green screen deconstruction of Matsu, of course, when you're filming the flying sequences, you're also filming them so you can put the image behind, whether the Matsu is flying in the sky or buildings, etc. But then I think what happened when we saw the actual image with Maggie Chong's stunt double in the space was it had its own aesthetics, its own, and it didn't take away from revealing the processes. In fact, it enhanced it, and also it highlighted the fact that these contributions of cinema techniques are very, unique in relationship to sort of Hong Kong cinema, Chinese cinema, and so it's part of an aesthetic contribution. So it's also doing these two things at the same time.
我们刚才看到这个画面，看到这在绿幕上面有替身现身的这个画面，它一方面当然是让各位看到这个电影拍摄或者是录像拍摄背后的劳动过程，但同时之间，它其实要特别去凸显出在前面各位看到张曼玉群在荧幕上面的时候，即便你已经知道后面这些事在发生了，它并不会因此去抹灭或影响你看待张曼玉这个画面的时候的美感，所以它一方面也是去强调说这个部分过程以及后面美感之间，甚至这个过程凸显出来之后，会让你更加的去欣赏跟理解这个美感的存在，而且他当然也希望去透过我们刚才提到的张曼玉，其实在很多的香港电影、中国电影都有演出。Isaac 也试图去透过这样的片段跟段落之后，去强化跟去描绘香港跟中国电影对于整个电影市场和电影史的这个贡献。
那有些人呢，其实我看了一些评论的文章，然后有些人会开始质疑你的作品是不是太有东方的异国情调，但是其实我这边会开始想说，你用了很多，比如说像是红色的颜色，或者是传统书法，然后当然还有金碧辉，就是当时的黄金时代的上海的年代，当然还有我们非常知名的桂林山水，那可能只差没有把熊猫把它拍进去这样子，但是其实我一方面也会想说，其实在中国这个帝国在建立它的国族神话的时候，其实他们自己不断的是在用这样的元素，他们有很多的仿古式的街道建筑，像是这个中国影视的这个拍摄的现场，其实也是一样，就是他是在拍一个他是在重新建制已经消失的过去的一个知名的南京路。但是他现在很多人明明知道那是假的，但是他还是去参观了这样子。所以我在想说， 你在使用这些东方元素的时候，是不是有意识到这个东西它其实也是一个中国帝国的神话建构过程？
But you know, one of the things which was happening when we were doing the research for 10,000 Waves was that, well, the original title for this project was called Better Life. But then what we realized in the run-up to 2010 for the Shanghai Expo was that the government decided to use the slogan Better Life.
那这个作品其实一开始的名称不是叫做万重浪，叫做更美好的生活。但是后来我们准备要去推出这部作品的时候，刚好意识到上海即将举办世博，他们当时的宣传口号就是更美好的生活。
So I thought, I better not use that title for my work. So I mean, in a way, I think yes, there is a kind of recourse to a familiar sort of imagery, which I think could be interpreted as a kind of imagery that you know, Asian audiences could be kind of familiarized with in 10,000 Waves. But I think in my piece I'm also trying to, in a way, talk about the Ming period. So it's quite difficult to talk about the Ming period if you don't shoot in the Guangxi province, and it's also quite difficult to shoot Matsu. You know, there's some things which are kind of, that in a way I would say that in 10,000 Waves it's very hyperbolic. So all of the representations are very iconic, and they're kind of what I call hyperbolic representations of Chinese culture. So it's all very symbolic. But I think also underneath it is this kind of, there's a kind of aesthetic, political aspect to the work. You know, it's a kind of recourse to the sublime to try to create a kind of political connection, which I think is more unusual in the work. So
那在这个作品里面，他们刚才提到，因为刚好撞名的关系，觉得我们应该要调整一下名字，不应该再做更美好的生活。所以他后来就反思之后，最后取的这个名字叫做万重浪。但在这个作品里面，其实有很多的，我们刚才提到有很多不同的东方的元素当东方的意象。所以那时候我在想，如果要拍摄妈祖的神话，然后要去找一个适合的场景，他觉得广西或者是桂林也许是一个比较适合的空间。他觉得如果在其他地方去建构这个神话的话，也许它会没有这么的适合，所以后来才选择了这个地点。当然，里面有很多非常典型的元素，是要东方元素，希望能够去呈现跟重现整个形象跟整个作品。所以这里面当然有一些美学的考量，当然也有一些美学政治的考量。它里面也试图去创造一些政治的连接，或者试图刻意去凸显出这些中国的元素，让各位特别去注意到它的存在。
Also, I mean, this is where Yang Fudong comes into my work, because Yang Fudong makes an appearance in the work, and I think Yang Fudong and I have been in this long conversation about the role of literati aesthetics, for example, and this as a kind of visual methodology which got suppressed, that I think he has been in the vanguard position of trying to really articulate, and so that's also another sort of aspect which I was interested in.
当然，在这个过程里面，他其实也让另外一位角色或者另外一位人物杨福东现身。Isaac 其实跟杨福东之间有很深的讨论，跟很深的对话的过程。他们的讨论是，比如说各种不同的视觉语言，也许过去经历过不同的过程之后，他希望以比较前卫的方式去呈现出来跟讨论出来之后，所以他特别让杨福东在这个作品里面现身，能够参与这整个过程讨论。
对，杨福东是在上海的一位中国当代艺术非常重要的中国当代艺术家，录像的对，影像的非常重要的。
顺便补充一下，杨福东老师是非常重要的当代录像跟视觉的艺术家，所以他的确在中国是非常重要的艺术界的人士。
杨福东出现的时机其实非常非常的有趣，这也是我下一个想要问Isaac 的问题，就是这个万重浪它其实大致可以分上2个部分，前面赵涛呢，他是从30年代的上海，一直到后来现代的上海，就是浦东那边，现在科技快速的发达，就等于很像是整个中国的现代化过程。然后后来接到的一幕就是赵涛跟杨福东2个坐在一个非常富丽堂皇，然后就是红色金色，就是非常中国的那种印象的，可能是咖啡厅吧，就是他们2个对望之后，赵涛走了，然后杨福东跟着他过去，然后其他的画面一直叠的是文化大革命，或者是那个邓小平毛泽东那个时候的一些档案的那个影像，然后后面就全部都是明朝妈祖的这个传说的故事。我非常的好奇说，那杨福东的角色到底是什么？那我在资料上是看到说杨福东是赵涛的 lover， 也就是说赵涛演的是神女，那时候阮玲玉的角色。那神女这部片我简单来说就是阮玲玉那时候是一个妓女，那当然她是为了抚养她的孩子，所以才去当妓女的。然后她有一次在街上就被警察就是要去抓她了，然后她就逃到一个人的房间里头，就是那个男人。然后那个男人虽然救了她，但是希望阮玲玉就是跟他就是上床，然后来回报他。最后那个男人又开始就是一直赖着阮玲玉，然后去跟他要钱，甚至跟他偷钱。所以，然后这个时候又在把这个角色跟那个文化大革命叠在一起，同时你也会很意识到，就是杨福东他其实是个电影角色，赵涛是电影导演的角色，赵涛是演员，这样子的一个是不是一个支配的关系，或者是杨福东他是不是属于一个男性或者是父权角色的关系？可不可以请你稍微再解释一下杨福东他到底在这部片的是不是有一个关键性的转折点？
Well, I mean, the thing is, I think one of the things around, these kinds of works is that there can be many interpretations, and everybody can have their point of view on it, which is what I want to do, is to make a work that what I call is an open text, that there can be many interpretations. But I would say that for me, Yang Fudong's role is both a homage to Yang Fudong. He plays a kind of gangmaster role, you could say, in the work. But he is also someone that I see, I've been in a kind of transatlantic, a transcultural aesthetic conversation, because he has been pioneering multiple screen works, and so have I. So I met Yang Fudong in 2002. My partner Mark Nash was working for Documenta 11 and had commissioned him to make his first film in an art context. And so it's been a long conversation in terms of the use of multiple screen work. So that's one of the other reasons why he's in it. But also in his role, he could have been Zhao Tao's lover. It's a fleeting image. So there are many interpretations, and in this sequence, for me, I'm interested in the way that the red of the room works with the way that you have the march of the red flags and they turn to green. So a lot of this sequence is about painting for me, but it's also the whole literati aesthetics and the fact that that moment is going to get squashed, by Mao. And so I think there's a way in which there's multiple readings that occur in these sections.
当然，这个作品里面，Isaac 一直认为它这是一个开放的文本，它代表各种不同的观点、诠释方式、不同的角度，然后去理解它。那杨福东在这里面，当然很多人都知道他是杨福东，他也可能扮演的是一个黑帮老大的角色，他可能扮演了各种不同的角色，同时并存在这个画面当中。他跟杨福东其实相识是在2002年的时候，当时 Isaac 的伴侣画正在进行第11届卡塞尔文件展的这个策展工作，他当时就委托了杨福东去做的第1件他在艺术领域跟场域的这个作品，所以对他而言，他们这是一个非常漫长的讨论过程。他也杨福东当然也是多频道录像的这个先驱，所以他其实在这个过程里面，这也是一部分杨福东因此会出现在这个作品的其中一项原因。而且各位后来看到这个顺序的影像的。应该说，画面的顺序的排列，其实是他把它视为好像一幅绘画一样，所以看到了红色的背景在这个咖啡厅里面，然后之后有各种红色的中国的元素，然后后面有毛泽东的影像，然后去描述的是毛泽东他去压抑了很多的这些不同的可能性之后，变成了一片红的画面，所以这是其中一种的解读跟诠释方式。
那刚才这个已经稍微有讲过这一个作品关于多频道呈现的一些意义嘛。那我想再请 Isaac 多说一点，因为我注意到他是1996年 Trust 这一个作品开始使用双频道的呈现方式。那 Trust 它在英文上是捆绑的意思，当然它还有另外一个声音呢，就是 trust， 它可以也是一个信任的意思。那当时其实是在探讨说艾滋病的这个年代，然后有就是他使用了男同志的恋人，然后他们是 SM 的方式，然后有点在讲说当时的那个他们的同志的恋情呢，他一方面欲望啊跟这些疾病或者死亡全部是完全捆绑在一起的。那可不可以就是他从这部作品开始，他就去想象说，那频道双重频道或是多频道，他开始可以给作品有怎么样更多的意义。所以我想请问 Isaac， 可能就是他其实是横跨的电影导演，还有他也在美术馆里头去呈现作品，就是这样子的一个多频道呈现方式，或是美术馆的呈现的地点呢，可以给他作品有怎么样的不同的可能性？
Well, first of all, I'm going to go back a little bit to the question around beauty, and the question around some Orientalism, because I think there's this question that's connected to this very early work, Trust, which, in a sense, one of the filmmakers I was very influenced by was a filmmaker called Derek Jarman, and he used a term called political lyricism. So I don't know how that translates, political lyricism.
当然，在这个过程里面，刚才提到这个1996年的 Trust 这个作品，那当时他其实深受这个
Derek Jarman
德瑞克贾曼的影响，然后当时他就描述了这个所谓的政治抒情主义 （political lyricism）。
Anyway, so the thing is that I think in relationship to this question of political lyricism, there's a way in which, in terms of the aesthetics, I've always been interested in this idea of queering the aesthetic. So that is, in a way, giving a twist to the idea of aesthetics when it's being viewed from a sensibility around desire and sexuality and these sorts of ways of looking, and that becomes part of a way of creating images. So I think when I'm creating images, I'm creating them through this kind of way of looking, and these things are connected to queer and gay cultures I think, in quite an explicit way, as a way of looking at the visual imagery, making visual imagery.
在这个过程里面，当然跟美学有关系。当然，1996年这个 Trust 这个作品当中，刚才策展人提到了这个作品，他试图在这个作品里面把很多的美学、很多的这些的美感的认知让它扩容化，让这些不同的这些出现一些变化之后，让去创造一种不一样的观看方式。所以，比如说他在无论是在创作影像或者去呈现影像的时候，都试图去创造这种扭转，或是这种不同的这个变化跟另外一种观看的形式。所以，比如说在每个作品里面都去有不同的扭转，在 Trust 这个作品里就是针对，比如说性别，还有这些欲望等等不同的翻转。
So you could say that this approach to making imagery is also connected to the aesthetics of presentation, and in the multiple screen works, I'm very interested in developing the language of querying the way that we look at framing, also the distribution of the images. All of these things connect to the way in which new technologies impact the way that we view.
在这个作品当中，当然多频道的录像其实有一种方式，其实也是扭转我们观看的方式。它并不只是单一的频道让我们看到这些画面，它可能分布、散布在不同的形式、不同的位置，散布在不同的区块之后，让各位的接受讯息方式能够产生扭转。所以多频道的录像当然也会有这种扭转跟翻转的可能性。
So then, if I take, for example, in an everyday way, we are on our mobile phones. We open one screen, we're on Facebook, we open another one, we're on Instagram, we open another one, we're doing our emails, we open another one, we're on Google. So we are working with multiple screens in our everyday transactions.
在比如说各位平常日常使用手机的时候，你打开这个画面，第一个画面可能是 Instagram 的画面，另外一个画面可能是 Facebook 的画面，下一个画面是不，所以我们已经非常习惯在不同在眼前有重新呈现不同的页面跟画面存在。
So then you could say that the rebellion of the moving image is about how those aesthetics, those ways of looking, in a way become part of the subjectivity of the artist making the work, hence the distribution of multiple screens in a gallery space.
所以在这种情况之下，多频道录像有些时候也其实是让艺术家能够去释出他的主题性，让他的作品同时呈现在不同的画面当中分散出现。
I guess the question is, why make multiple screens? Why do I want to have you move in the space, to be choreographed in the space?
这也是部分原因，他希望各位在走进作品去观赏的时候，能够游走在不同的录像跟不同的频道之间。
And I think there is a politics to this. There's what I call the kind of political lyricism, the question of aesthetics and how you view images. But then also, I think there's the new languages of aesthetics which are being developed in correspondence to the way you navigate your looking within the space. So it's another deconstruction, it's another breaking down of the normal classical modes of looking at moving images in the cinema when you're presented with a single screen presentation and told the normal heterosexual boring story of boy meets, girl, etc., etc.
所以当然这是不同的翻转跟不同的扭转，在同时这个过程当中，我们刚才提到了有不同的录像同时在各位的眼前出现之后，当各位在观看的时候，同时多频道的接收，同时各位在游走的时候，也影响了你如何去观看的过程，还有观看的角度和方式。另外一点，他也希望去解构另外一个画面，另外一个情境是，一般人我们都坐在电影院里面去看这些传统的单一频道的异性恋的男生喜欢女生，男女之间相爱的故事，他希望去翻转这些不同的。
So I have lots of theories as to why I make multiple screen works. There's the distracted spectator, the spectator that's always looking on their mobile phone, that's never looking at the image. There's the spectator that looks at the image with their mobile phone first. then there is the idea of breaking down the kind of normative habits that we bring to the cinema. So the idea of the mobile spectators, that in this work I want you to move, I'm forcing you, I'm choreographing the spectator in the space, or I'm troubling or querying the way in which you might ordinarily look at images. So all of these aesthetics and questions are involved in both making the imagery, but also in how it's displayed.
所以当然，在他去创造这些多频道的录像的时候，一方面他去思考如何透过多频道录像去创造特定的效果。例如说，他透过影像的编排跟影像的呈现的顺序之后，他去促使你或者强迫你必须要在这个空间里面游走。所以它解构了平常我们身为观者或身为旁观者的这个角色，并不只是站定在某一点上面，而是必须在里面不断的去游动，然后让各位能够去解构这个过程，去解构了我们平常跟荧幕之间的关系，并不只是看单一荧幕而已。所以这里面有不同的思考在纳入其中，去创造出这个多频道录像。所以这多频道录像的创作并不录像的创作并不录像创作会受到多频道的影响，同时也会影响到人们去观看这个多频道录像的感受跟想法。
那我这边最后一个问题就是想请问 Isaac， 就是他过去的作品其实常常是沿用一些电影类型片的拍摄方式，像之前在北美馆呈现的《巴尔的摩》这个作品呢，它就是受了黑人剥削电影的启发，然后但是它其实是为了去破解说电影的视觉文化中对于角色的一些刻板印象。那这次他参考了这么多的中国的电影，有什么样的形式手法是你选择去引用的吗？
Well, I think, that one of the things in 10,000 Ways I was trying to do is to have this dialogue, this trans-cultural dialogue, because I've been looking at Chinese cinema since the mid-80s, when I first showed my work in Asia. So it's over a long period of time. I was very familiar with, Taiwanese New Wave filmmaking, with Wong Kar-wai, and all of these cinemas. So I would say that in the cinema world there's a kind of trans-cultural conversation, and then that trans-cultural conversation began to take place in the visual arts, with the... So I think these things are the things which have been very important. But I think in the work there's a kind of trying to connect to these aesthetics and representations, and I think I want to utilize the history of Chinese culture, cinematic culture, to make a comment on questions of migration today, because I think there's the question of the migration of aesthetics culturally, which we don't really speak about so much, which is an important sort of development or correspondence. We tend to speak more about the relationship to those in another direction, So I think that these were the kind of aspects which I was very sort of interested in terms of making the works. But I would say one of the other things was that also everyone who I collaborated with on the work, including Maggie Chong and the cinematographer, they also wanted to participate in making this work because it was like a different way of making imagery from the ways in which they ordinarily worked. So Maggie Chong was interested in working in this piece because it was an artwork as opposed to a classical film work. And the cinematographer and all the film industry people that I worked with in Beijing were very fascinated about making a multiple screen film as opposed to a single screen film, or working in a more classical manner. So there was a kind of exchange that was also taking place, I would say, in terms of aesthetics and cinema in Chinese culture and Western cultures.
这一次的过程当中，他当然希望能够创造这种跨文化的对话。他Isaac 从1980年代他的作品第一次在中国还有亚洲展出的时候，就开始注意到很多来自于香港或者是台湾电影新浪潮电影，或者是王家卫的电影等等，所以他长期以来都已经去慢慢去熟悉，跟慢慢去接受到这些不同来自于台湾或香港以及中国的一些电影文化，所以他也希望能够去运用这样的文化之后去。这些的元素之后去做一个跨文化的对话，而且很多的时候，我们今天讨论到人员迁徙的时候，都可能会遗忘到这些人员迁徙会造成文化的影响。通常人员会讨论到的可能是文化的影响造成人员迁徙，但是人员迁徙也可能会造成文化影响。他希望让这两个层面都能够在这个作品里面能够再现出来。当然，在这个作品当中拍摄的时候，这次在中国拍摄，它这里面包括了来自中国的摄影团队，还有来自香港张曼玉等等，他们其实都对于参与这样的作品很感兴趣，因为这样的创作方式跟他们原本或者是习惯这些传统的电影拍摄手法是不一样的。他们并不只是做单一的录像，而且对他们而言，他们做这次做的是一个艺术作品，而并不是他们平常习惯所拍摄的电影等等，这些都也是他认为在这次的制作过程里面创造出来另外一种交流或对话，东方、中国还有西方之间的对话。
那我这边收到了2个来自观众的提问单。第一个问题是在这样子的科技的年代，你的作品呢其实非常像 VR， 所以他在问说为什么你不用 VR 来去呈现你的作品？他说他看起来其实会比9个大的荧幕来说会更具当代性。
Well, interestingly enough, I was approached by some art patron who is working VR, who has commissioned several artists, including sort of Jeff Koons, Irina Branovich, and Oliver Eliasson. But what he said to me was that the problem with VR is that all of the programming is basically attuned to video gaming, to gaming, and that you can only really start to approach VR once the programming is re-attuned away from gaming. You know, so the kind of the aesthetics of VR and what I call non-neutral. You know, so it's not like you just enter into VR and it's like a neutral technology. It's already, the paradigms are already like constructed. So, you know, if you're going to enter into it, I would want the formula and all the programming to be remade from how I work, not that I enter into a pre-arranged program. So, but on the whole, VR is not, I've got lots of issues around VR. I can talk about them, but we should just talk about that point, yeah.
这是在他资助他做作品的是其中一位的资助人，他其实也资助了不少好几位的 VR 的艺术家。他当时他们在讨论 VR 时就是说 ，VR 其实有个问题是，他们现在背后的一些程式设计都是主要是针对游戏在做设计的 VR 的这些 VR 程式，所以如果你要去做这个，你使用 VR 的时候，你势必会受到这个游戏化或者是游戏倾向的这个程式设计所影响。所以 Isaac 认为这个 VR 目前的程式还有整个环境是一个非中性的环境。Isaac 希望他如果进入到一个创作的环境里面，这个创作环境是可以为他所使用的，或者这个环境是可以经过他的调整之后，去满足他所希望表达的叙事方式跟叙事风格。但他认为现在目前的 VR 其实主要是针对游戏所使用，所以你进到这个已经建构好的趋于游戏的环境的时候，就势必会受到这整个环境跟这个技术跟程式背后的影响。所以他当然，其实对 VR 还有很多不同的想法。不过今天就先暂时只在这边。那
第二个问题是，请问您对中国文人艺术，也就是 literary 的关注，他觉得非常耐人寻味。因为文人艺术其实就是一种在现实生活中多频道的互动。不知您是否和杨福东讨论过这个问题？ Literary.
Oh,
I explain to you. Both you and Yang Fudong use multiple screen. And actually, the essence of literary art from ancient times is a Chinese tradition, and it's in reality it's multiple screen channels, interactive. The interactive is the most important part of literary. That's why Yang Fudong used multiple screens. I don't think it's for the technical reason. It's more for the spiritual aspect. So I just wonder, you both use multiple channel, multiple screens. Did you ever talk about the spirit of the interactivity between the literati, members, and how they exchange ideas, aesthetics in real life? Did you ever talk about this with Yang Fudong? I'm just curious.
Yes, we had lots of conversations which were connected to the more kind of philosophical aspects in the use of multiple screens and those aesthetics. And I think, in a sense, they're not just about technology, So I think the question of the performative aspects and the question of, so in a sense I want to get back to the mobile spectator, because I think what is important for me in the use of multiple screens is the associative, performative aspect that you get when you have the correspondence of a community, in a space, which is being involved in a sort of aesthetic appreciation that's a move away from the kind of normative aspects to a more sort of aesthetic sort of correspondence of images and politics and culture. So I think these are the motivations. You see, in VR, it's a solitary experience. So it has a completely other political effect. You may seem as if you're embodying the aesthetics of multiple screens, but you're not, because it becomes a kind of experience where it's a kind of, not a depoliticizing one, but it's a solitary experience. So the question of community is completely different. So I think that's where there would be my political differences around those aesthetics. So that was one of the sort of aspects. But the questions are never completely devoid from technology, but I think, there's always the kind of aesthetics aspect, which is the thing which comes first for artists in these attempts to deal with language and image. But I'd like to have more conversations with him about these questions. Maybe these conversations are more alive in Taiwan, in Taipei, than mainland China.
当然，跟杨峰老师他其实有很多在美学上面的这些哲学讨论。虽然使用这个多频道的录像，并不只是针对了技术，并不是为了科技而已，他们还有很多在呈现上面的想法，在这些美学体验的想法等等。他们认为，在这个多频道录像，刚才Isaac Julien特别提到这个流动的观者，这个不同人们在这个不同的频道之间穿梭跟游走的一个体验，而且在这样的空间里面，这是一个集体的体验。你看到这么多人一同去感受跟感知这一个美学的政治的文化的不同的含义而已。像这个 VR 它是一个，虽然它的确是看起来好像是多频道的体验，但它其实是个非常孤独的体验。它是非常孤单的一个环境，你是一个人在体验这个过程。它跟他们想要所创造的这个共群体，还有这个共感这个体验是很大的不同的。所以，当然他也希望跟杨副董事有更多不同的类似跟这样的对话。他也认为这样的对话也许相较于在中国、在台湾也是更适合出现。
我这里 ，OK， 我这边又收到2张哦。第一张是说，一般人的手机和电脑屏幕上面的多视窗以及展场多频道的呈现，是否自动会产生解构或观看政治的效益？美术馆里的观众多为文化精英，就您的观察，他们的观看政治是否扩散到一般社会大众的解构式观看能力？
Well, I think, you know, I was going to say, the other thing I was going to say is that I think I'm a modernist. The other thing I was going to say is I think I'm a modernist. And so in that sense, I think I've always been very interested in sort of the aesthetics of the avant-garde. Where is the avant-garde? Where is the sort of, you know, the idea of a kind of politics of aesthetics, which is in conversation with some of those sort of earlier questions. And so, in a sense, I think, for example, when this work was shown at the Museum of Modern Art, it was a work which had an audience of over 600,000 visitors that came to see the work. So I think this relationship between popular and high culture, at least in that context, gets eroded if we're talking about audience and who gets to see a work. But I wouldn't confuse a smartphone with like the aesthetics of a multiple screen work. You know, I think they're different.
当然，在这样的过程当中，其实他好像思索是，如果身为现代主义者的话，到底前卫是什么？那前卫在哪里？比如说他的作品在当时在美国的 MoMA 展出的时候，当时的观展人次有60万人，这样的情况之下，它到底算是大众吗？还是它是不是流行的？而至于多频道的录像，当然，他在他的心目中认为，他其实还是跟我一般平常看到的电脑荧幕的这些不同的分页，还有智慧型手机里面不同的页面是有很大的差距。
那这边的最后一个问题是，他说中国卷轴呢是没有间断的，但是电影是会剪接，然后荧幕也是多频道的。 所以，请问，在您的作品之中，你是如何引导观众去游走在展场之中？
Well, I have to say, I saw so many scrolls in the Palace Museum, so it was really fantastic to see that because it was a kind of aesthetic that I was also working with in 10,000 Waves. But I would say that it's really connected to the sound, is how the sound choreographs the spectator, which creates an ambulatory spectator. And so, but you know, old habits die hard, so that's why we provide seats as well for those who want to view and stay within their old habits of viewing moving image works.
这一次他在故宫的时候，看到很多非常精彩的卷轴，非常美丽的卷轴。他也希望他在作品的创作的时候，也可以去引用这个卷轴这个连续的概念跟想法。那至于人怎么样去促使人们开始移动跟游走呢？他觉得声响的效果很重要。透过声响设计跟安排之后，其实可以去提醒或者是吸引人们开始去游走跟观看。当然，他也相信有很多人很习惯。 作者在静态的空间跟静态的位置上面去观看这个作品，所以其实展场四周还是有长椅可以让大家坐在同单一的位置观看别的作品。
You know, I have my ideal spectator, which is a bit of a fantasy, and in reality, the spectator does what they want. You know, so I can't control the spectator. So you know, people have their own relationships to viewing, and you know, one has to respect that as well.
当然他心目中有着理想的观者或理想的观众，但是实际上每个观众都还有自己的习惯、自己的想法，但是他艺术家没办法去控制观看这些观众如何去移动，所以每个人跟观看之间的关系都各有不同，他们必须要去尊重每个人跟观看的关系。
那接下来各位观众还有没有什么其他的问题呢？老师。
好，谢谢主持人。刚才倒数第二个问题是我问的，那个填那个提问单当然有个节省时间好处，但是比较缺乏对话，而且字数有限，所以我稍微再elaborate一下我刚刚的问题。刚那个Julien先生说的回答可能没有办法，因为我没有办法解释清楚，因为他稍早提到就是说我们今天的一个观看，我们在手机上面我们常常是开很多个视频 ，Facebook、Instagram 等等这些东西。那我的问题是说，这样子的一种比较破碎的、碎片化的、多视窗的观看，能不能够自动移转到一个让我们观看一个美术馆里面，像他的这张作品有一些深刻意涵的，有一些结构的或者是一种政治性观看政治的这样子的一个作用因为我会比较关切，就是说，因为我相信这个Isaac Julien先生是很在乎观看政治、文化政治这个族群政治等等这些事情。那我相信他会有兴趣，希望他的作品不是只停留在一个精英，不管这些精英是60万人或者是6000人。事实上，我也怀疑那60万人里面有多少是带着一种仰慕的一种情调化一个当代艺术的方式去看到一个很炫的东西，而忽略了后面的结构意义。这样子，即使他们看到这些精英，他们如何能够，当然这有个先来后到，有些人更世故一点的会懂得怎么看东西。那就是我只是在想说，今天当代的这种科技文化，它如何能够形成让艺术家取得一个更好、更有效的一种方式，使得这种可能需要一种更世故的这种观看能力，跟大众的观看有一个可以更好的一个结合，而不是就是说，可能有些观众是一种观光客的方式来看当代艺术馆里面Isaac Julien的一个非常厉害10几个屏幕的东西，然后就是带着一个敬畏的心，但是忽略了那个后面的结构的这个正经。我大概意思可能还是没有说清楚。
Well, the thing is, I think, my approach to making work is that sometimes there's a way of making works where people can appreciate them in different manners. So I think we all bring different sorts of attentions to kind of works. The main issue that we have now is we don't have much time, because we're involved in a kind of scarcity in relationship to time. And that's because of the way that new technologies has impinged on our time, it's stolen time from us, Instagram, Facebook, social media, computers. So there's a way, I think there's that aspect to it. But I must say that, maybe it's more like a phenomenon, but, to a certain extent, more people go to museums and go to football matches. Yes, it's a different class, but I think that there's a kind of more wider appreciation in a kind of younger population, let's say. And I think that is quite encouraging, but I think also there's the idea that some of these questions may seem to be connected, just to the elite. But I think that it's a little bit more complicated than that, because people go to concerts, they see multiple screen works in these other contexts. It's not just a museum, it's really sort of, of course it's in advertising, we don't like it, but it's in this space. So I think, in a way, this is becoming part of a lingua franca of, of this age, so to speak. So, and it's seeping into these different areas. May not have the same political concerns, but I think it nonetheless has a presence, and so therefore maybe different people have different access to reading these things in different sorts of ways.
每个人在走进展厅的时候，都会有不同的关注的角度跟观看的方式，还有观看的想法。现在另外一个问题当然可能是因为现代科技这么的五彩缤纷，这么的多样化、多元的情况之下，很多人的时间可能被瓜分，变得更加的零碎、更加破碎。我们可能更需要的并不是观看方，而是观看的时间。也许觉得观看时间变短或变少了。那当然，到底什么样是精英的存在大众，什么样的内容会去连接到所谓的精英的话，当然还是非常值得讨论的。现在年轻的一辈有越来越多人愿意走进美术馆，或者是去观看这些艺术作品，当然是好的现象跟值得鼓励的现象。很多人也会去看足球赛，很多人也会去看演唱会。演唱会里面也有很多多频道的视觉的体验跟也许可能是广告，也许我们不喜欢，但是其实这并不是仅限于多频道的这个体验，并不只仅限于艺术场域的环境跟艺术场域的空间而已。所以在这样的情形之下，到底如何去思考这个过程？那到底要如何去创造这个体验？当然还是有很多非常值得继续讨论跟继续思考的过程。所以这是我们在当下跟现实当中必须去面对这个科技跟还有人们的体验的转变。
我就用中文，就是我注意到 MoMA 的那个厅很大很高，所以那个多屏幕的效果会有很多屏幕在天上，但是好像在上海跟台北就是很水平的，所以你几乎可以看所有的画面，然后变得比较亲密，就跟那个影像比较亲密。所以我想问一个问题是说，这种多屏幕，很多人会把它说成是一种很景观化，就是你只能观赏，就是好像相比之下，就是 MoMA 那个看起来比较像 spectacle， 但是我不知道你怎么去，就因为刚刚你没有说你理想中的 spectator 是怎样。那 spectator in the moving image or moving in the moving image 这一件事情，是怎么样可能的？那这个是我有点好奇的，是因为你有说到 Studio Hall 的影响，就是说文化研究这种普及的这种影像教育，那是否就是影像是可以在那个当代艺术这个场域里面可以被更亲密的，或是被解读这样子？
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things around, one of the things around making the work like 10,000 Ways was the idea to be able to show the work in a number of different scenarios. And so I've been making multiple screen works for some time, and so in a way, sort of being able to show the work was the idea to be able to make it be shown in many different circumstances. But I would say that you're right, that in the kind of MoMA presentation, because it was in the atrium, it had to be suspended, it had to be shown at least sort of nine feet above people's heads. So, I mean, in a way it was an experiment, and so that's been one of the things that's been really fantastic about being able to show the work in these different configurations, so in the configuration there, it's very much sort of working with that atrium space, and I think one of the challenges is being able to show the work in different contexts, in different sorts of ways. But I was talking to Tom Cullen, and we were saying that we think that this is one of the best presentations of the work actually, you know, we have installed the sort of 9-screen work in 19 different cities. So basically, it's a work which has been installed many times, but I think there are, you know, sometimes ways of installing it which, you know, are kind of working more successfully. So this is a more classical installation, and in a way it's original kind of conceptualization for it to be installed in the way that it's installed at MOCA Taipei.
各位现在在画面上看到是2013年在 MOMA 所展示的画面，它其实这个每个荧幕、每个这个录像的屏幕高低不一，有些人甚至在2楼去观看这个作品，所以观看的体验每一次都不太一样，在不同的情境、不同的环境里面去架设跟去呈现这个作品，它会有不同的效果。基本上这个作品很多的荧幕其实都是离地大概9英尺高，所以其实还蛮高的一个空间，所以有时候很多人是必须要仰望的这些画面。那他们每次都会有不同的挑战跟不同的考验，在这个作品呈现当中。这个作品其实已经在世界19个城市都展出过了，每一次它都有不同的技术上的困难。他们其实有时候会认为这样的作品在某些情况呈现是更加理想的。那这一次在 MOMA 呈现是比较经典或者比较传统这种跟每个人看到的这个荧幕的高度都是一样，这个平行的体验，所以当然创造到这个体验不一样。上次在 MOMA 体验当然也是一个不同的实验。
那我刚刚那个有一个小问题，刚刚听到，就是still hold the cultural study scholar still holds very famous in the world, and he also kind of promote any kind of literacy of this image in like a high school or some kind of adult school. But I'm wondering that if you use his kind of cultural study way to create images. And how do you think that using film or multiple screen in the art sphere, which can make his friends say that this kind of literacy or say education for a common community to have the rebellion of the new moving image, this kind of consciousness. Yeah.
But I should say that, you know, that I was very close to Stuart Hall. I know that Stuart Hall's work was first translated in Asia, in Taiwan. You know, that his work in cultural studies was very much acknowledged here in Taiwan. So basically, you know, Taiwan has been the first space in Asia to take up the cultural studies theories, and I collaborated with Stuart over several works. Lucas Langston reads the narration of the work. He appears in a film I made called The Attendant in 1993. He worked with me on the documentary series, Black and White in Colour. We also worked together on my last work, Playtime Capital, and he wrote about my work before his death. It's the last essay that he wrote about art and artwork. So we have been in conversation for a long time, and he was really quite fascinated by 10,000 Ways, you know, and Stuart was very involved in the arts. In the latter part of his life, he basically was involved in the creation of an art centre, a museum that David Adjaye designed, and he saw the arts playing a pivotal role in the articulation around difference and culture. So I don't think he had this popular culture, high culture divide in the same way that's been articulated in the kind of cultural studies translation of his ideas. I think it was a little bit different, it was a bit more nuanced, but he certainly didn't want to prioritize one above the other. You know, there are different modes of address, different ways of communicating.
文化研究学者之后，他其实在亚洲的第一本的译著，他的译著就是在台湾出现，所以台湾的文化研究其实很早就已经认识到了之后这位非常重要的学者。那其实之后跟Isaac 之间的合作非常的长久，他在93年的作品里面就曾经跟他合作过，后来有陆陆续续很多的作品合作过。2014年在Isaac 的作品 Playtime 跟 Capital 的时候，之后也曾经在他辞世之前写了最后一篇的论述文章，就是跟这部作品的关系，所以之后也认为万重浪这些作品非常的迷人。他其实之后在晚年的时候非常深入的参与了很多文化中心还有美术馆的陈设跟设立。他的Isaac 认为，其实之后在过去在他的文化研究里面，其实并没有特别的去强调，比如哪些是大众文化，哪些是一般文化或者是高等文化这样的区别，他并没有这么的去在意，或者是他没有特别去区分这两种之间的差别。所以对于 Isaac 而言，他跟周末之间的讨论其实有很多长期以来不同的想法跟思维，慢慢的在发酵当中才形成他们之间的在不同方面的合作。
So there you go, there's Chia-Wei, and he's in conversation in this work. It was one of my last works that I made, and it's one of the last works that he appears in. So it's that's a whole other work. Maybe it comes to Taipei one day.
这是他在2013年曾经做的这个 Capital 的作品，跟之后就曾经现身在这个作品当中，所以当然有机会，也希望有一天，也许 Capital 这个作品可以在台北呈现。
那其实我们座谈的时间已经到了，我们开放最后的一个问题，如果还有问题的话。
其实我有2个问题，一个就是其实他的背景应该就是比较经典的影像的创作或是理论的部分。那其实我们在看万重浪的时候，真的觉得非常强烈的感受到那种剧场式的移动这样。那我想要请问他，就是在剧场这方面是怎么样的研究，或者是他有怎么样子的？对，从剧场这边有什么样的影响，触发他想要做这样子，也让他的观众沉浸在这个作品，成为这个作品的一部分，然后在展场里面移动这样子。那另外一个是我比较注意他在声音呈现的部分，因为他在这个万重浪的作品里面引用的不只是这个王平的诗词的朗诵，他其实也有增加，比如说救援的声音，然后还有电子音乐跟传统然后非同的这个电影我们很熟悉的背景音乐的混搭，那就是有一种东西融合的感觉。那我想要请问他在音乐这部作品的音乐声音呈现上面有什么样子的过程或者是想法？
Well, I mean, one of the unspoken sort of influences in relationship to making my works is Brett. So Brett and his use of theatre, all of these ideas are very much alive in works like 10,000 Waves and other works. The use of deconstruction, the all Brechtian ideas. So yes, theatre is very much part of a language. It's also part of the scenography, the way in which the screens are designed, and some of the ideas around the mobile spectator, that's all around sort of trying to unlearn the habits of looking and to create new ways of looking.
当然 ，Brett 他跟他的这个剧场的体验的确当时就影响到了我在这个陈设这个多频道录像的时候的设计还有陈列，也希望大家能够去用在这个过程里面能够去意识到或者是接触到一种新的观看方式。
And then also there's of course the relationship to sound. So sound, there's a sound piece also in the exhibition, which is a fantastic work really fantastic. And I really love the way that in this work you get this relationship to architecture and the sound surrounding you in this piece. It's a really fantastic piece actually, and connects to some of my interest in sound myself in a work like 10,000 Waves and other works where the sound is as an important component as the imagery. And so in 10,000 Waves I worked on a 9.2 surround sound, which means that I had to create my own dubbing process for making the work, and we made this in Peter Gabriel's Real World studio, and so it was quite a complicated process. So this kind of multi-dimensionality of the sound, sculptural relationship to sound, is something which I'm very interested in. And in moments in 10,000 Waves that there are no images, it's just the use of the sound, the sculptural relationship to the sound, how it's being orchestrated in the space. And these are also these theatrical devices in relationship to encouraging this kind of mobile spectator motif, which I'm interested in the work.
在这次展览《影像的谋反》里面，吴灿正老师的作品重新编码，就是完全用声音来作为他的创作的素材。各位如果有机会的话，可以听听看他如何用声音去触发人们的记忆，还有不同的画面在各位的眼前当中去呈现形塑出来。所以他一直对于这样的如何透过声音去塑造人们的体验，去塑造某一个环境跟情境的这个的概念很感兴趣。所以在万崇光这个作品里面，其实声响跟声音的重要性并不亚于影像。它这是使用的9.2环绕音箱、环绕声场的这个制作过程，但录制过程非常的复杂，但是希望能够让这些声音在不同的方式，透过剧场装置的设计之后，能够让这些声响环绕还有回荡在整个展间当中。所以这是他一直以来对于声响还这个跟这个影像如何结合有很深兴趣的关系，也希望这次的作品当中有呈现出这样的效果。